I think there are lessons to be learned in everything that goes wrong in our lives. And the question is, are you willing to learn those lessons? And by the way, it's all relative. A breakup could be the thing, you know? I mean, it doesn't have to be something, you know, that the world regards as catastrophic, you know? Losing a job, I mean, anything that challenges you emotionally. The question we have to ask ourselves is like, what can I learn from this? So there's a very famous experiment that was done, I think in the 60s. Basically, they put a rat in a cage and they gave it plain water, or they gave it water laced with drugs. And it tasted both. It got addicted to the water laced with drugs and eventually drank that water until it died, right? And so this became our understanding of addiction. Many years later, not that long ago, another scientist said, hold on, there's a problem with this experiment. A rat, like a person, is a social animal. And you took this social animal and you put it by itself and then offered it drugs. So you created loneliness and then you offered the drug, right? If you want to make it a good experiment, you have to create the right context. So what it did, they created something called Rat Park, where basically what they did is they created a new cage filled with things to do and mazes and wheels and other rats, and they were social. And the rats tasted both waters, the one laced with morphine and the one that was just plain. They drank enough of the morphine-laced one to get addicted, and then they stopped. It diminishes how much they drank, and they only drank the plain water. So basically, when you have healthy relationships, we are less likely to become addicted. When we are lonely, we are more likely to create addiction, right? Friendship is the thing that actually protects us. My girlfriend and I were having a pretty bad argument, and it went something like this. Here's what I did right, and here's what you did wrong. The response was, well, here's what I did right, and here's what you did wrong. The response was, well, here's what I did right. In fact, here's 2 things I did right, and here's 4 things you did wrong, right? And this went on, clearly going nowhere. It's getting more heated, it's getting more aggressive, it's getting more personal, and I had the situational awareness to realize this is a lose-lose situation. And I literally interrupted. I said, okay, hey, I'm interrupting our argument, and I'm making new rules, okay? Currently what we're doing is I'm telling you the things I did right, and I'm telling you the things you did wrong, and you're doing the same. I'm changing the rules, new rules. I'm gonna tell you the things that I did wrong, and I'm gonna tell you the things that you did right. I'm gonna go first, and then you're gonna go, okay? Here's what I got wrong, and here's what you got right. And she goes, well, yeah, well, here's what I got wrong, and here's what you got right. And I was, well, here's what I got wrong. And in 4 minutes, we were joking and laughing and hugging and realizing that we were contributing to the tension, but also the other person was really trying. And literally, it was only from all of these classes and skills and practice that I at least had the sensibility to recognize the situation I was in, to change the rules midway. Because I think part of the problem is, even if you have the skills, sometimes we forget to deploy them. We have forgotten that we're social animals. I mean, like, just go back a few years, a few decades, right? So, Second World War, right? The camaraderie. I mean, think about what happened in America and in Britain during the Second World War. So, during the Blitz, the number of people who sent their children to the countryside, and they stayed back to support the war effort, okay? They didn't move to the countryside with their children. They could have. They sent their, think about the insanity of that right now, that parents sent their children to the country to be safe, to be raised by another family, with the full expectation that they may never see their kids again because they might die in the Blitz. Like, that is incomprehensible to a modern day. And yet that made total sense, that we stayed back to support the war effort and to be a part of it, and we sent the kids to the country. In the United States, more people died by suicide who didn't get called to action. The shame of not being called to serve was more overwhelming than the call to service. There were more suicides in the United States from people who didn't get called to serve. Will Guidara, who I'm writing the book with, Will's friend's dad died. Will texted him and said, I feel for you. I know what you're going through. I lost my mom at an early age. I'm sure you're being inundated with calls and texts. So I'm not going to call you today. But what I will do is I will call you every single day at 9:45 a.m. Do not feel obligated to pick up. I don't mind if you don't. But when you're ready, know that I'm calling you. And for the next, I think it was 3 months, 8 months, something, he called every single day at 9:45 a.m. And for the first week, his friend didn't pick up at all. And then after the first week, he picked up every day and they talked every day for months. Like, think about the intentionality that somebody who loves and cares about you so much that they will call you every single day at 9:45 just so that you can see their name pop up in the caller ID to know that you're not alone. I mean, it brings me to tears just thinking about it. Like, how many of us are that good a friend? You know? I want friends like that.
Fear is an emotion. It is sometimes irrational, not always, sometimes irrational, and it can produce behaviors that can be antisocial. If you're afraid enough, you can hurt someone, right? You can hurt them with your words, you can hurt them with your actions based on fear, right? We've all said things in relationships out of fear, right? So let's take an analogy. Coal town, and say, we're getting rid of this coal mine, it's bad for the environment, we're going to replace it with solar and wind, and it's the right thing to do. And they're always surprised when the town of coal miners is angrily against it. Right. Now the reality is they're not anti-wind, nor are they anti-solar. All I know is I'm a coal miner, my father was a coal miner, my father's father was a coal miner, all I know is how to do coal mining, and all I know is this mine down the street produces income for me to take care of my family. And you're coming in here and say, we're going to take your income away. Right. We're not getting rid of coal, we're taking rid of your livelihood, and you have no discernible skill set. What you get is fear. And when somebody doesn't feel seen or heard and they feel afraid that you're coming in to take something away from them, they're going to put up a wall and say, you cannot do that, right? That's the same thing going on here, which is all the discussion is all the job that's going to take away, all the things it's going to destroy. And so what it's producing is fear. And when you have fear, you have emotional reactions that have nothing to do with computers, nothing to do with algorithms, nothing to do with generative AI. What it has to do with, at the minimum, is how I vote. But worse, it can get people so afraid that they start lashing out in antisocial ways, sometimes as individuals and sometimes as groups.
Go back a bunch of years, probably 10, 15 years, when Starbucks was really becoming a thing. Mm-hmm. It was a huge backlash because they were putting mom and pops out of business. Right. Do you remember? Yeah. Turns out, right, that when Starbucks moved into a neighborhood, mom and pops actually did better.
Wow.
Because a few things happened. One, there was a sort of a grassroots rumble to support the local business, and the other is it brought customers. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem was remember what coffee shops used to be? Coffee shops used to be some dingy little hole in the wall with a ripped couch, right?
Right.
And when Starbucks moved into a neighborhood,
it was nice.
It was nice. And
so it made them up level.
So the ones that thrived were the ones that saw Starbucks not as a competitor, but as a worthy rival. That Starbucks' existence revealed to us our weaknesses, and we upped our game. The ones who went out of business are the ones who got mad that Starbucks was stealing all the customers because they didn't change a thing. Taxi companies are up in arms about ride sharing. Newsflash, an app is not putting you out of business. Because you can call a taxi with an app. It's not the app. It's that in some cities, not all cities, the product that I get when I get an Uber is better.
Superior.
I live in New York City, right? In general, Uber, Lyft, Juno is a superior product. There's a nice person in a nice car versus getting in the back of a New York City cab, which quite frankly, it's just a shame. Yeah. It's a bad product. So they can complain about the app and sue the ride-sharing companies, or they can up their game, right? We see this over and over again when people complain and file lawsuits against a new competitor, but it's because that competitor is exploiting a weakness that you have an opportunity to fix.
Yeah. In leaderless times and lost times, we will follow things that make us feel good, right? Wealth makes us feel good. Conspicuous consumption makes us feel good because you get that hit of serotonin and dopamine. when you think about all of the problems that we're facing today, mental fitness, mental health, rising suicide, rising anxiety, depression, addiction, I mean, take your list, even people's obsession with longevity. And everybody's looking for a biohack for all those things. And there's one biohack that's better than all of the things that we're trying, which is friendship. People with close friendships are healthier, they live longer, they have better coping mechanisms, which means they better deal with stress. So let's look at alcoholism, right? Alcoholism, we know that to beat alcoholism, you join AA, community. And everybody talks about the importance of community and finding your community, right? But Alcoholics Anonymous knows that there's these 12 steps, and if you master 11 of the 12 steps, the disease is probably gonna get you. But if you master the 12th step, the final step, you're more likely to overcome the disease. So what's the 12th step? The 12th step is to help another alcoholic, to become someone's sponsor. In other words, to become a friend. In other words, community, you find community, but then the final step of beating the disease is a friend, where you replace the community with a friend, and you have both. And we think community is the thing, but it's not enough. Yes, you can create belonging with community, and people, where we started talking about it, where people are latching onto these anti-establishment populist movements. It's giving them a sense of community. It's giving them a sense of shared purpose with a group of people, right? But it's also providing new social connection. You want to know why we're lonely? Because we've architected our lives to be lonely. Of course it's hurting us. We are social animals who've over-indexed on rugged individualism. We heroize CEOs. Like, I love you, you're great, you're wonderful, but people consider you a hero and their business guru, blah, blah, blah. I know for a fact that you didn't do it alone. I know for a fact that you've got teams of people who make you look good. I know for a fact that people took bets on you, took risks on you. I know for a fact that people made introductions for you. I knew when you had nothing. Sure, you had moxie, sure, you had talent, but if it weren't for people who tried, supported, helped, opened a door, there would be no Stephen Bartlett.
Of course.
We know parents that build up their kids' confidences, parents that are capable of building their kids' confidence really, really matters, as opposed to telling a kid constantly that they do everything wrong. Like, that'll hurt the kid for the rest of their life, and they're gonna have to do a tremendous amount of work to overcome that. I'm not an expert, I'm a student. I've always viewed myself as a student, right? And so my favorite people are the ones who ask the questions that other people are embarrassed to ask because they don't want to be seen as dumb. Students, if you're in a classroom, nobody minds raising their hand and asking the teacher, how does that work? Because we're the students. So I treat myself as a student in every meeting. I don't mind asking the questions that I don't know the answers to, even if it makes me look like a fool. I don't mind saying, I don't understand that. I never try and be an expert in somebody else's business. They're the expert in their business. I'm not curious about everything. I'm curious about the things that I'm curious about. And I ask a ton of questions, and I don't mind not knowing answers. I have strong opinions loosely held, Somebody just told me the other day, one of the things they liked about me, which is like, I'll come out swinging and I will argue hard for something, but the minute you give me a good argument or a piece of evidence that proves me wrong, I'm like, yep, you're totally right. I'm completely, like, again, strong opinions loosely held, right? We think we have friends, yet we still struggle and feel lonely. If you have good friendship, you will not feel lonely. You may have moments of loneliness, and in those periods, you will pick up the phone and say to your friend, I need you, I'm lonely. And your friends will be there. You will feel not alone, right? Or, and you and I have talked about this, about you will feel that someone will get in the mud with you. And I think the problem is we don't give intention to friendship. So think about it. And you and I are both guilty of this. In fact, I would argue that everybody's guilty of this, which is we've got plans booked with a friend. Let's call it a lunch. A work thing comes up. We call up the friend, I got a work thing. And the reason we keep bumping our friends is because they'll understand. They're our friends. So why aren't we prioritizing our friendships? Why aren't we saying to the work thing, I'm sorry, I've got a thing. If we had another meeting, we would say, sorry, I've got an appointment, I can't make it. So why don't we treat our friends with the same intentionality that we treat any other meeting? One of the things we don't do is we are not good at making friends, and we're not good at looking after friends. There's an entire industry to help people like us become better leaders. I'm a part of it. I write books about it, right? There's an entire industry to help people be better parents. And if you're going to have a child, if you've got a child with problems, you read all the books about how to be a better parent. There are no books, or precious few books, to teach us, and there's no industry to teach us how to be a better friend. Like, are you a good friend? Are you a good friend to your friends? Are your friends good to you? Who do you call people when you are stuck and down? Or do you make TikTok videos by yourself? Which, and you get, literally, people who are depressed make TikTok videos by themselves. I don't know how many times they reshoot that either, to post it to get the validation for their feelings. But to call a friend and say the same thing you're struggling with is actually more difficult. The technology addiction is still a thing, but I think it's a thing for all of us. I think it's pronounced when kids grow up with it because they don't know any different. And again, it's not their fault, it's parents. Parents who give unfettered access to a device when a child is young, they're setting themselves up for some real challenges later. I think there's lots of data now. When I was first talking about it with millennials, it sounded like sort of whiny, Luddite adults. But now Jonathan Haidt has written about it extensively, and there's lots and lots of data on it now. And we all know what dopamine is. We all know what a dopamine addiction is. We all know that the social media companies are hijacking our dopamine system. We all know it. It's like common knowledge now, right? So I think the awareness that they have is good. But the advice is the same, which is, and I think what Gen Z is struggling with more than probably millennials is the loneliness question. And I think partially because of technology and isolation, and because I can have a friend online. And now the rise of AI friends, that's going to be a whole new thing. If you want to find purpose, you have to take accountability for your life. And what I mean by that is like no one can bestow it upon you. No one can just give you a purpose. It is within you, and it is there to be discovered, right? But at the same time, everything that happens to us in our lives, we have to say, okay, how did I contribute to this? How am I responding to this? How can I make this bad situation better? What did I do to make the situation happen?
Every single person has the capacity to be the leader they wish they had.
Yeah.
And so I'm a great believer that leaders are made, not born, right? It's a skill set.
Yeah.
You can learn it, you can practice it. Not everybody wants to learn it. Not everybody's going to be good at it. And it takes a lifetime of work.
It does.
And you'll never be the best, right? And so for people who want to be the leader they wish they had, they have to become students of leadership. You have to read books, you have to watch talks, you have to read articles, you have to have conversations about it. I talk to small companies all the time and say, we don't have a budget for a leadership training. I'm like, do you have the budget to buy a book?
Right. Or to
have a
listen to
book club.
podcasts or videos.
Have a book club.
Yeah.
Once a week, get together over lunch and talk about a chapter of a book that everybody's reading. Or an article that you read. Or a TED Talk. Or a podcast that, give everybody homework to watch something for 18 minutes and then talk about it on Friday at lunch. Congratulations, you have a leadership development program.
Right.
And don't assign anybody to run it. Ask the people who are already reading the books, watching the talks and listening to the podcast, ask them to lead it because they have genuine interest. Every single one of us can be the leader we wish we had. When we say build your self-confidence, that's the instruction is saying go inside. Look inside oneself. But I think that's a false direction. Children aren't born self-confident. Their confidence is built from their parents and their friends and their teachers, where they're rewarded when they do well and they're pushed when they fail, when they can do better. Simply, we know this, that simply telling kids that they're great all the time actually doesn't build self-confidence, actually does the total opposite. Right? And I, for one, I can tell you, in my own experience, my own self-confidence, 100% comes from the relationships that I have. It's not some deep internal fortitude. A world-famous trapeze artist is not going to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. So it's the people in my life. It's when I do doubt myself that somebody says, you got this. When somebody says, I believe in you. When somebody says, no matter what happens, whether it succeeds or fails, I'm going to be by your side. That's when I have the confidence to do difficult things.
Wow.
Right? I don't have
some natural battery that just,
Right.
that to me is bravado.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's self-confidence.
Cats are naturally good at being cats. They don't have to study, they don't have to learn, they're just naturally good at it. Human beings are not naturally good at being human. We suck at it. And again, it's because of that neocortex. It's because we have the ability to overthink everything, right? You can literally prevent yourself from sleeping because you are thinking about something that you cannot control until you wake up tomorrow. It's madness, right? But we have that magical ability to overthink everything. And so it's really hard to be human. And we actually have to learn and practice and read and watch things and ask people to get better at being human.